Welcome students, you are still enrolled to Oral Communication for Senior High School. Now, give me one object and enumerate its parts. Do you have something on your mind now? Alright, so just like this phone, which has a screen, a camera, a volume rack, it has its own parts. So in this topic, we're going to talk about the elements of communication. We all know that communication transfers information, data, or expresses ideas. We start with the first element, and that is the sender. The sender is also known as the source of the message or the information. The sender is responsible for putting meaning into her message. Now, when we talk about the sender, the person is the source of the message. Just like right now, I am the sender of the message. When you are talking to your friend and you initiated a certain topic, then you are the sender of the message. The next element is what we call as the message. The message is the information, ideas, or thoughts conveyed by the speaker in words or in action. This could be a combination of words and action. But messages are being encoded by the sender. The sender encodes the message to the brain. It transfers through the channel. So encoding is referring to the process of converting the message into words, actions, or other forms that the speaker understands. Non-verbal communication, verbal communication are within the scope of encoding. So while talking, while making an action, just like this, that is what we call as encoding. And who encodes? The speaker. The speaker encodes the message. But how does a speaker transfer the encoded message? It's through the channel. The channel is the medium or the means, such as personal or non-personal, verbal or non-verbal, wherein the encoded message is conveyed. Say, for example, if you are chatting your friend while typing, that is what we call as encoding. But when you send the message through a mobile app, then the mobile app such as the Facebook Messenger is what we call as the channel. Whatever instrument you're using during the communication process, that is what we call as channel. When you are in front of a lot of people and you're using a microphone, the channel is the microphone. If you're calling your mom, then the channel is the phone. Decoding. Decoding is the process of interpreting the encoded message of the speaker by the receiver. The person whom you are talking is also listening to you. So that is what we call as decoding. When the person reads your statement, your letter, that is what we call as decoding. It is somewhat like a box, a parcel, a gift, and when the person unwrapped the gift, that is what we call as decoding. And when a person decodes the message, it means the person interprets your message, your encoded message. So it is somewhat like the speaker has a gift, and when he gives the gift to you, you unwrap the gift, and that is what we call as decoding. The person who receives the message is what we call as the receiver. The receiver acts as the recipient of the message, or someone who decodes the message. Going back to the sender or the source, the speaker, the role of the speaker is to encode the message, to write up the message, to speak up the message. But the receiver, from the word itself, receives the message. The person who receives the message is what they call as receiver. And the role of the receiver is to decode, to make interpretation, to make meaning on a certain message coming from the sender. The next element is what they called as feedback. Feedbacks are the reactions, responses, or information provided by the receiver. It could come in many forms. It could be through words, gestures, or actions. Feedback is the result of decoding. How you interpret the message will reflect to your feedback. Like for example, if you don't like the speaker, you will have a negative feedback. If you were amazed by the performance of the speaker, of the person in front of you, then it reflects to your feedback. You might clap your hands, you might stand up and give that person an ovation. That is a reaction. That is a reaction. And that becomes a feedback. But not all feedbacks are obvious. Not all feedbacks are explicit. There are also implicit feedbacks, just like silence. Silence is a form of feedback. Even if you have not spoken anything, even if you have not rolled your eyes, even if you have not reacted obviously, apparently, silence is still a feedback. It could be again through words, gestures, or actions. The context. The context is the environment where communication takes place. It is a communication situation. When we talk about context, the way you communicate differs from one place to another. Because not all the time you become informal. Not all the time you become formal. Especially when you are with your friends, you don't talk formally. But when you talk to someone who is in a higher position, when you talk to a politician, when you talk to your teacher, it must be in a formal way. Meaning, you should know the environment where you are taking place. You should know your environment where the communication takes place. Because again, not all the time you have the same style of communicating. The next one is barrier. Just like any situation in life, there are barriers. So barriers are also called as noise in communication. But we divide noise into two. It could be internal or external barrier. I have prepared a special lesson for barrier, but just to give you an overview of what's barrier, again, it could be divided into two. First is internal barrier, which means the noise is coming from the inside, from yourself. When you are bothered, when you are confused, when you have a lot of things on your mind, that could be a noise into yourself, and it could also be a barrier when you communicate with other people because you are jam-packed, you are preoccupied, then that might also affect how you communicate with other people. The other one is what they call as external barrier, where you have a sibling crying while attending a class, while attending a Zoom class, when there is a rooster at the backyard. That is what they call as noise. When your neighbor has been singing for 14 hours and you have a meeting to attend via Zoom or Google Meet, then that's a noise. Everything that is making noise in your environment is what they call as barrier. So again, the elements of communication. We have the sender or the source. We have the message, and the message is encoded. We have the transmission. We call it also as channel. The recipient or the receiver decodes the message, and after which the receiver gives a feedback to the sender. If you have learned something about elements of communication, share your learning on your favorite social media by using the hashtag OralCommSirDM, hashtag elements of communication.